Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. It is a wonderful, cozy, rainy day outside, so I decided it would be the perfect opportunity to show you all the thread work I've been doing. Now yes, it is actively raining outside. I don't know if you can hear it. If you can't, I'll turn it up for you. Here's the rain. So if you're hearing that sound throughout this video, that's what it is. I hope you're nice and cozy and ready to see all the things I have made. Now, if you don't know, I both knit and crochet. I learned how to knit when I was a kid, but I only really picked it up again in 2020 because we had online classes and I really wanted to keep my hands busy with something. So I knit a bunch of scarves. So first thing first, I knit this blue and gray scarf. It is 22 centimeters by 163 centimeters and it is 46 stitches across. And this was just a regular knit. This is the first thing I picked up again after not knitting for years. I had one blue ball of yarn, one gray ball of yarn, and these size 4 knitting needles, and they're green, which is lovely because I like green. And I split the two balls up into two halves by weighing them because I said it was 250 grams. So I put it on a kitchen scale and I unraveled it until it was down to 125. And that worked out pretty well because I did a blue chunk, transition to a gray chunk, back to a blue chunk, and then finish on a gray chunk. My transition between the two colors isn't too great. I picked up both threads at the same time and just knit like nothing was different, and it's a bit bumpy. The color looks a bit funny, but it's not the end of the world. It's a transition. You can see what happened there. It's no secret. All in all, I really like this scarf. It's quite cozy. I think it's cute. I wear it around the house when it's cold. I like this one. I'm definitely going to keep it around. Next up, I knit a green scarf for the exact same reason. I wanted something to do with my hands while it was exam period, and this green wool was some flimsy thin yarn that I found in the local grocery store, and I just picked the best color they had available. And this is thin. I don't know if you can, but I can see through it. This one is about 18 centimeters wide and 137 centimeters long, and I used 35 stitches on this. I just knit purl the thing. And if you don't really knit yourself, knitting is directional, I guess you could say. You can do a stitch forward or backwards, and knitting is doing it forward, purling is doing it backwards. So it's going forward, back, and that's how you get a bit of a different look to it and a little bit more stretch. I did consider doing something a little bit more intricate, but at the end of the day, the point of knitting for me was so that I'm keeping my hands busy without counting stitches, really looking what I'm doing. You can feel what you're doing while you're knitting, so I don't have to watch my hands at all. I can just feel my way around as I'm going. So I knit another scarf. So exciting, I know. This one is black. It's 20 centimeters wide by 102 centimeters long. I think I used two 250 gram balls of wool on this. And if you look at where I began this, you'll see that it's tighter than the rest. I was trying one or two different stitches just to keep it fresh, and a line or two in was like, I don't like this, and then just continued straight with normal knitting. With this scarf, I was really rushing to finish it because I think it was 2023 when my husband went sailing, and I really wanted him to take a scarf with him, and I was working on this and I was rushing to finish it so that I can give it to him before he departs. And he did take this, so this traveled all the way to South America and back. After 3 scarves, I was like, okay, that is a little bit boring, so I made a little top instead. I made the pattern for this myself. I do that with knitting, crocheting, and sewing, even though it doesn't always turn out great, but I figured this out myself. I did like a stretch stitch at the bottom until it felt like it went around my middle enough, and then did normal knitting up and dropped stitches as I went so that I had a little bit of a V going in the front, like so, and it just goes straight at the back. And here I had to stitch the back together, and I don't know how much you can tell, but it's a bit of a mess, but it's attached. It's not going anywhere. And then for the little straps, when I had only 6 stitches left, I kind of went around with them, and by that, instead of turning around and going back the other way when you get to the end of the stitches, you just pass it along on your needle. So you go 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 instead of going 1 2 3 4 4 3 2 1 1 2 3 4 4 3 2 1, which it's really hard to explain yarn work without being able to draw a picture, but I don't think anyone's going to recreate this flimsy little thing. I don't really wear it, but technically I did knit a little top. But because that didn't really work out and I already bought the yarn, I was like, oh, let me make a scarf. And this is the only thing I ever knit and gave up on because it was a mess after a mess. I don't know what went wrong here. I think I was doing knit purl with an even number of stitches, and I thought it would be kind of cool to have the end be like diagonal, and I was gonna add frills when I finished. It wasn't doing for me. I kind of kept this in the car for when we were doing road trips so that I could knit while we were in the car. There are just so many things that are messy on this, and I just was not passionate about this project, so it has been sitting on the needle for probably 2 years at this point. Am I ever gonna finish it? Probably not. I should probably just frog it, and then I have this yarn to do something else with. But it is when I was in this kind of stalemate with this project that I picked up crocheting. And this is the more exciting part. I have definitely been a lot more creative with crochet, and crochet is a lot more popular these days. People tend to enjoy it more and do a lot more with it, and I will say it is easier in some aspects, but I do miss knitting, so it's not like the one has replaced the other for me. I do find that my hands get tired with crochet a lot quicker than I did with knitting, and I have to look at what I'm doing. But in terms of tools, I have 2 crochet hooks. This first one is a 3.5mm hook, and I already stuck it through the back of the original like handle grip thing, and they don't sell replacements for that. I can't find any, so I put a piece of sponge on it and wrapped it in some wool, and that's what I'm currently working with. So I very much made this little hook my own. And then I also have a 9mm hook, which is a much bigger hook, and you can do a lot of things a lot faster with this, but it's also heavier. And then I also have this little hook for my finger. It's so that the yarn doesn't keep pulling on my finger because it creates like a dent and the friction is uncomfortable after a while. So instead, this is literally just a 3D printed little hook my husband made for me. I put my finger on it and the yarn goes through there instead of going over my finger. The first thing I ever crocheted was this kind of mesh bag. Now this definitely isn't anything complicated, so I did pattern it myself, but I started out with a single crochet solid bottom that is a bit dirty because I have used this thing, but it took forever and I was still learning the tension, so my hand got sore pretty quickly doing it. So I was like, oh hell no, and I switched over to a treble crochet stitch for the rest of the thing, and I just went around, up, around, until I felt like this was tall enough of a bag, and I ended it with another single crochet line at the top. And it ended up being kind of a see-through mesh bag. I used this as a gym bag, and it was pretty nice that it was airy. I didn't have to worry about like my wet gym shoes or toiletries or anything because it aired out in this bag. But I went back to the single crochet to make 2 firm straps that won't stretch out, and I just attached them, and I made a nice stiff little piece here, which is where I learned that you can make a pattern with this patterned wool, and it doesn't just have to be chaotic. It can actually come together in something intentional, which is really cool for future reference. I left a little buttonhole, and I went to haberdashery, bought a button. I have a bag that can close. I don't use this much now that we don't go to the gym anymore. But I finished this bag, as awkward as it may be. I'm really glad I didn't end up like unraveling it, because at some point I was like, what is this gonna be? It was supposed to be a laptop bag. At some point it didn't turn out to be a laptop bag at all. And I was like, should I instead just look up what I'm doing instead of just throwing caution to the wind and making whatever? But it worked. It's a bag. It holds things. After that I learned that granny squares existed, and I made a whole sweater. 0 to 100 on the crochet. It is a lot easier to make than it looks because you just make 100 granny squares. I think I made, how many did I make? 72? And then you attach them all together, you round off the sleeves, and then you have a sweater. And I enjoyed making this sweater. I like the color, but I never really end up wearing it. I don't know why. I think I should just make an effort to actually wear the sweater because it's a sweater. But I went with a granny square pattern that doesn't really have a lot of holes because I wanted this to be fairly solid. So I started with my little circle in the middle, and then I had 4 double crochet stitches that went into the hole, and then 4 just chain stitches, and again 4 in the hole, 4 chain around the granny square, and then I went up a level and just added 2 double crochet stitches to each side as I went up a layer, and then I trimmed it with a single stitch, which is then what I connected on the inside. I connected by just catching 1 stitch from the one block, 1 stitch from the other block, and doing a single crochet stitch through that. And I kind of switch between that or slip stitches. It doesn't make a major difference. So this thing is 5.5 blocks tall, and it's 5 wide on the shoulders, and then I only have 2 on each side of the front, so there's like a gap of 1 thing here, so it wasn't just slit, so that it actually made a neck opening. The problem was that I ended up having to do half a little block in the back, which worked out. Trimming it really does help kind of straighten out anything that's wonky, but what did end up being weird were the sleeves. I went with 3 blocks around for the sleeve, but here at the top I added like a little triangle single crochet piece, so it's a bit wider here because just the 3 was a bit tighter on the arm, but 4 would have been a bit much, so I just worked it and then gave myself the space there to add a little bit of extra material, which is nice. The crochet is really flexible, it lets you do that. And then I just did 5 rows of slip stitches on the cuffs and here on the edge of the thing. I don't know if you can tell it curls different on the 2 different sides, because at some point instead of picking up the inside I picked up the outside and went the wrong way around, but it works. I attached buttons and I left holes for buttons so I can button this thing up as well. It's quite warm. I'm currently quite toasty having it on for this, but I did accidentally make one too many granny squares. I misplaced one and then I put the whole thing together and found it ages later. So what I did was I went back in and I added the granny square here. So I have a little pocket on the inside now. How cool is that? By the time I was done with this, I was quite annoyed. I do like working in sections, so it's more rewarding. So every time I finished a granny square, it was rewarding. I was like, yay, I finished something, I can move on. And there were breaks built into it because of that. I wasn't just working on one thing that felt like it took forever. But at some point when I got really good at doing the granny squares, I was like, okay, kind of overdoing the same thing over and over and over again. Can we do something else? But then luckily when we got to the connecting part where I was attaching all the granny squares to each other, I really enjoyed that part. As much as it was harsh on the hands, I did enjoy that part. But yeah, I'm glad I whipped this out to look at it today because I quite like it. I should wear it. Now luckily I'm not really in the habit of giving away things that I make, so I can show you almost everything I have made. But when I got this hook, I decided to try and make fabric out of 2 old t-shirts I never wear. It was like turquoise type of green and this blue, and I cut it up and I made this really choppy kind of looking yarn. That was an interesting experience to work with, first of all, something this big, and second of all, to use a recycled t-shirt as yarn. And I pretty much made like a little lunch bag out of it, and my husband used that for ages. It was just big enough for him to pop his lunchbox into, and then it had 2 handles for him to carry to work and back, and he forgot it on the train one day accidentally, so that lunchbox is not around anymore. That was a really functional thing that I made. Like this sweater, like I said, I haven't really worn, but that thing was used almost every single day, so it was a shame that that got lost. We did look for it, but oh well. The next thing I made was also with this 9mm hook, and it was also for my husband. It is this huge chunky blue sweater. Again, patterned the whole thing myself. I had to look up how to make kind of a like stretchy stitch for the edges of the thing, which I hated doing that. It's a bunch of slip stitches, if you don't know, that's how you do it, and I don't like it. It's tough on the hands, it takes really long, it's not rewarding, I don't like doing it. So every time I finished a few rows, I put it around myself and go like, is this long enough? Can I move on? And it isn't. Now I have to do a few more and I check again, but I did that, and then it's just double crochet all the way to the top. It's essentially 2 big blocks, the front and back panel, and then I attach the arm, and again, stretchy thing here. And then, oh my goodness, this neck hole was such a pain because I measured what was supposed to go on my head, and then I tried it on and it was too tight, so I had to undo it and do it all again. And add the fact that I don't like doing this type of stitch, it was up and down and a lot of effort. Didn't really like it, but I finished it. And what's cool is it has one type of pattern on the outside, and if you flip it around, it has another type of pattern. And that happened because I kept picking up loops on the same side. I didn't alternate or anything, I kept doing it on the same side. So here you can see all the loops, and on the outside you don't see the loops, it's just the stitches. But this is heavy. This is really a hefty project that it's not really what I had in mind. It wasn't supposed to be this heavy, but what was I expecting? I was using a much thicker yarn because I was using a much bigger hook. Of course this thing is hefty. I did wash it and it took like 3-4 days to dry. So I'm very careful with this thing so that I don't have to wash it a lot. It does have a front and a back because in the front I went down 2 lines to add the collar, and in the back I only went back 1. And that's so that the collar isn't just a straight line, it actually does have a dip. So I did double crochet, down to a single, down to a slip, back to a single, double, so it kind of had a bit like that. That's how I did the back, and then for the front I did that, and then just 2 single crochet on the side to make it deeper. So there is a front and a back on this thing, and I should actually just mark that because every time I have to hold it up and try and see this side is a bit lower than the other, so this is the way it should go. And this is hot. This I know, like I wear tank tops under this thing even though it's winter. This thing is an absolute hair magnet, so I always have to make sure there isn't like hair on this thing, especially with the cats around. And yes, it makes frills and stuff. And I buy cheap yarn, I buy that acrylic stuff, because I don't want to splurge on something expensive and then be like stressed if I'm doing it right, especially if I'm not using a pattern. So I know this is a consequence of that choice, but it's okay. It's okay. I like it. The glasses can't stay off because I have to put on the next one too. I bought a rainbow pastel yarn and I made a poncho with tassels. And I really like this project. This is probably the one that I have worn the most, and that worked out really nice because I crocheted this while wedding planning. Whenever I was like stressed, I would sit with my wedding shoes on to break them in and crochet this poncho, and I think it's so cute. I wear it out a lot. I do feel like it's a bit like iconic, it stands out, so I feel like I shouldn't wear it too much because it's super recognizable. But it's more of a summer poncho, this. It's not that hot. Obviously, I mean, it's open on the sides, but I can wear it year round, which is really nice. How many stitches is this across? Let's do some math. This is like 93 stitches, but what I did is I just made a chain stitch, put it on my shoulder, down my arm until it was like, this feels long enough. And then I did a bit of a pattern, I guess you could say. I did the first row solid double crochet and I was like, oh, this is gonna take a while, but the treble crochet didn't really work. So instead I tried doing double chain, double chain, double chain. And that's how I got like these little holes. So for every chain I would just skip a stitch and on the next one make a double again. But that was too holy and I was like, I don't want the whole thing to be holy like that. So I did a pattern of 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1 for the solid. And then every time I'd space it with a gap. So I would do 3 solid lines, a line with gap, 2 solid lines, line with a gap, 1 solid line, line with gap. That's how I did this. And I kept just throwing it over my shoulder until I felt like it was a good length. And then when I felt it was a good length, I literally changed direction and did stitches up along the side here. And I kept folding it to make sure that this edge is as long as this edge is, and then kept going until it was the same length and then just attached it. And when that was done, of course I trimmed the whole thing just because I feel like it makes it nice and neat. And for the tassels it was really easy. I had yarn left, so I took a bottle, so to be the same size every time, wrapped around it 6 times, slipped it off, cut it on the one side, and then with the loop I pulled through all 6 of them. And then once I had the loop I just pulled the tail ends through there and tightened it, and after that I straightened it with the straightener so that they weren't all frayed the way they were just from being rolled up in a ball of yarn. And this is the project. I really like the color scheme. I thought there's sections that are like toothpaste green. I was like, why is there so much like toothpaste color in this thing? This whole thing's gonna be toothpaste, because I felt like every time I was looking I was working on a toothpaste section, but it ended up having more of a blue overall thing, and I really like the way this looks. I am a big fan of this little poncho that I made. And even though I'd already made the 2 other sweaters and scarves that I'd worn, this is the first thing that felt like, hey, I made something I can actually use, something that's actually a part of my wardrobe. I don't know what made this different, but this is the first thing that felt that way. Oh, and of course that was done with the 3.5 hook, not the 9mm hook. This is the hook I'm currently working with, and I'm going to show you my current project, even though I am nowhere near done. I decided I want to learn how to do tapestry crochet, and that's basically where you draw little pictures with crochet. So it's kind of like pixel art, and my husband and I spoke about it, and I was like, Minecraft is a bunch of pixels. Can you help me pick a bunch of Minecraft pictures for me to make? And then the inspiration just went from there and ended up doing this whole like rainbow blanket concept thing, which who thought a blanket was a good idea? This thing's gonna take forever. I started in September and it is currently the end of March and I am approaching halfway, which actually is not that bad. I haven't been working on it the whole time, but this was my first attempt at tapestry crochet, and hey, that looks like a little Minecraft helmet, but I have all these loose ends and weaving them in absolutely sucks. It was also a lot of effort to do this with the single crochet stitches. They're just not fun. Don't do anything that's solid single crochet stitches. You're not gonna enjoy it. So I have this. I can't really frog it because I cut the yarn to be able to do this, but I decided, I'm gonna go double crochet instead. And that works pretty nice. It does make it go a bit quicker. So it is 40 across and 40 up now with a single, but I ended up doing a double. So it is 20 stitches up and 40 across. But that just means that each row is a line of pixels, but I have to do 2 stitches for each pixel as I go. And I also learned that if you catch your tails as you go, life is so much easier. So that's what I was doing. I initially wanted to make the pictures like this, and then I wanted to pick the like 3-4 most used colors in each row. These 20 by 20 stitch squares, and I can have like a mosaic of the squares around this to give it like a border, because I was just gonna have 5 of these, and 5 of these next to each other is not wide enough to be a blanket. So I thought by doing that I could add quite a bit of material to the blanket, make it quite a bit bigger without having to pick out even more pictures, because it was hard finding the 25 I want to work with already. So I thought to do that and hated it. It was double crochet and everything, but I just did not like the process. I think it's because I was joining the colors in a really weird way, but I ended up just putting these together and I attached them at the bottom like that so that I can have like a little pencil case. And I did buy a zip to put in the top. So instead of frogging these or just throwing them away, I ended up making a pencil case out of this instead of, you know, putting it around. That was the vision, kind of. But this is the failed part of the project, and then after that, I really figured out what I wanted to do. And it turns out what I wanted to do is just 4 double crochet rows around the block to trim it in a rainbow order. And I thought this turned out really cool, and then I attached all 5, and I think it looks really cool. I like it. And this is the first row of the blanket, super excited. It took a while because this was my first time doing this tapestry crochet thing. It took me a minute to figure it out, but I did, so the next row went a lot quicker. The next row is the brown row with all the brown Minecraft items with the gray and brown trimming and already attached. But this is the foot end of the blanket, this is the top end of the blanket, and after I planned out the whole project and all the colors I was going to need to do this, it made most sense to work from the bottom up just because of the colors I would already have compared to the ones I need to buy again. But 2 out of 5 rows are already finished. I started with a 3rd row that is an orange row, and I just freaking love it every time I finish trimming it. It looks so cool. Whenever I finish the actual picture part, I can't see it. Like, I've been looking at it too long on the computer screen and counting stitches. It's just blobs of color to me. It doesn't like compute as a picture. So I usually have to like hold it up to a mirror to be like, oh look, it's a flower, I can see it now, you know? It also helps to just stick in a drawer and not look at it for a few days, then you can see it again. But I really like the pop of color that comes from trimming the thing, and I'm currently working on the next one, which is a little carrot. And this one I'm showing you specifically as proof. I do this myself. Like, I didn't order this, I didn't buy this. The day I have a full Minecraft blanket to show you, I made the whole thing. And I'm already very proud of it. But I did pattern this myself. I don't have the patience to look at someone else's pattern and figure it out. So for some reason in my head, it's less effort to struggle and figure out a pattern myself than it is to understand someone else's, because when it comes to the like complex parts where it gets really technical, if I'm figuring it out in my own head, I know what's going on. Like, I know what the intention is. Where if I'm reading someone else's pattern, I run the risk of just not understanding the approach or why they're doing this and it not working out, and that annoys me more than applying the brain power to figure it out myself. So this is not to say I'm good at patterning, it's more to say it's not as hard as it sounds. Just try it. Be willing to fail. You need to be okay with the fact that you might have to do some like janky fixes, but it works, it's fine. And then this is the project that's gonna keep me busy for the next few months. Again, like I said, I'm only on row 3 out of 5, and I'm not entirely sure how I want to connect them. I feel like a blanket should be taller than it is wide, but this is going to be a square. But that is the extent of all the things I have done, both crocheting and knitting. The crocheting is definitely a lot more exciting than the knitting, but I want to knit something when this blanket's eventually finished. But this was fun. It'd be interesting to see, you know, how I've improved over the years and keep record of these things. If you found this entertaining, I think I'll do the same thing with everything I've sewn, because this is a nice way to see that I've actually done something. You know, like if you ask me before this, have I made anything? I'll be like, oh, maybe 1 or 2 things, but I've made like 10, 11 things. I've done a fair amount of yarn work. If you also do yarn work, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear what your current projects are, because that's always very interesting. But then that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and seeing everything I've made, the product of literal hours and hours of my life, as much as I enjoyed every single minute of doing that. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye bye.